everyone! This is Remleiz and 40k Theories, and welcome to this new episode of Adeptus Podcastus. Joining me as always is Tactica Imperialis.
Hello everyone!
And joining us as our guest this week, quite appropriately given the massive releases for Warhammer the Old World, a denizen of the Old World, Loremaster of Sotek.
Hello, hello!
I just don't say denizen of the New World, technically.
I was about to put up my nitpick glasses, but you beat me to it.
I'm a legacy denizen now.
Yeah,
he could be from the city in the Southlands. We don't know, because that's still technically Old World, so there we go. It counts. There are others in the Old World, technically. I know it's the one city, but even so. But anyway, how is everyone doing?
Good. First Warhammer Club of the year has gone in the books. I actually won!
Hooray!
Congrats.
So the student who I know listens to this because they took the piss out of me over the Warhammer crime fiasco. Suck it!
Oh yes, your infamous comment of like, I've yet to try crime.
Yeah, they came into school a few days after the podcast came out and went, so miss, I heard you like crime. And I was like, shut up. So yeah, I beat them tonight at Warhammer Club and I was very, very happy about it.
Well done. Just wait until the next episode of Quizcastus and you bottle it on the towel question again. But
Shut
anyway.
up. But yes, also, can we just point out that this podcast is now played host to a actual legitimate world champion?
Oh yes, we can indeed now.
Because obviously I appreciate this is not going to apply to 90% of you because me and Remleiz are massive wrestling dweebs, but we had Samoa Joe on this podcast. Samoa Joe is now the champion of the second biggest wrestling promotion in America and therefore the West. Ergo, kind of a big deal. You know, slight feather in cap there. Sorry, horn tooted.
It is. Though again, for me to be a nitpicker, he was a world champion in TNA.
Yeah, I said second biggest promotion.
That counts as well.
TNA wasn't.
That was when they were the second biggest promotion, yeah. No, that was when they were the second biggest, though.
Okay, fair enough. All right, you can have that one.
Yeah. Yes, I'll have that one. So, in the news this week, what do we actually have?
Old World.
Aside from the massive goodie bag, let's start with that one, because that's the thing that we were talking about before you turned up. Yeah, a massive merchandise box full of Old World swag, including a hoodie, a t-shirt, a dice bag, and a giant blanket that's also a map.
Why?
Because
Why not?
Someone will buy it, that's why.
Not for £145, they won't.
You'd be surprised.
I mean,
Be surprised.
I like the hoodie. Like, if they sold the hoodie separate, I would probably get that. The rest of it's kind of like, it's all right. But I do think the hoodie looks very, very nice. I like the design of all the little factions represented.
I agree. Because I think the only other hoodies you can get are a hoodie with a map on it, or a Bretonian or a Tomb King on it, or just with the logo on the Warhammer merch site at the very least. Yes, there's actually a Warhammer merch site for those who don't actually know, but yes.
It's been a thing for a while. I did a video about it a long time ago.
Yeah, it's actually one of their nicest websites now, by default. Because it's not the new one.
Yeah,
we went on a rant on that one a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Also, I just noticed some stuff regarding like the Space Wolf merchandise gift set. And it reminded me of something I did see on Twitter the other day regarding like all this artwork you see with wolf skulls, how 9 times out of 10, any artwork you see of a wolf skull is actually a raccoon skull.
Oh. Yes, actually, yeah, I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of time, like, that you depict like a wolf skull, like a rounded cranium, but wolf skulls actually have a pointed ridge for the attachment of jaw muscles. Raccoons don't. So, there you go. Space Wolf, Space Raccoons. There you go, new chapter.
Oops.
Descended from the Raven Guard, expert thieves. Yeah.
Isn't that magpies rather than raccoons? Wouldn't that be better off the Raven Guard?
I was trying to make a sly raccoon reference, but anyway.
Okay, that works too. But yes, so Old World is now a thing. It's in people's hands. A lot of people got early copies and have been very busy with it. I've seen a few articles about it. And overall, I mean, I played a bit of fantasy, but really not a lot. And as far as I can tell by looking at it, it's playable as an old fantasy player, but is one of them of don't assume there's an old fantasy player that you can just pick up and play it. That seems to be the vibe I've gotten off it. I don't know if you've had chance to actually read through the book or play it at all, Sotek.
Not yet. I've read scraps and pieces of it. I've things have been busy around here, but I have read through a fair amount of the rules, and it's definitely, it's kind of, how do I say this? It's recognizable to old fantasy players, but because it pulls from like a bunch of different editions kind of simultaneously, it is definitely not something where you're just going to walk in and be like, oh, I could do this, no problem. Because there's a lot of very subtle changes. So it's definitely, even if you're a veteran of any of the old fantasy editions, there are going to be things that will catch you off guard. Not in a bad way, but just in that you'll want to be really observant about reading the rules before hopping into a match.
Yeah, absolutely. That I was playing tonight and it was like, this is how it worked in 9th. Is this still how it works in 10th? You get into the habit of, this is how I know it was the last time I'd read the rule book, so I'm going to assume it is. And then you get caught out when someone goes, well, actually, it's changed now. It's now this. Like, I got done tonight because I didn't realise that to complete a charge, you need to get within engagement range. Engagement range is 2.5 inches. So, actually, what looks like a long bomb 10-inch charge is actually like, you only need a 7 or an 8 to make that charge stick, which drastically increases your odds. And I didn't realise that, and I've been playing it wrong the entire edition.
Yeah, that is definitely one of the big traps. I mean, that happens to me all the time, especially with like Age of Sigmar as well, and especially nowadays, considering Games Workshop puts out like seasonal rules every 6 months. So there's a lot of stuff that you'll be like, oh, I know how this works, and then you actually sit down and read it and go, oh wait, no, I got that completely wrong. Well, fun.
Yep, pretty much. But obviously, there was a little teensy bit of controversy in that because this is Warhammer the Old World, they made sure that you knew about it. By which I mean they're only supporting a limited number of factions, i.e. the factions found within Forces of Fantasy and the Ravening Hordes book, which is about 7 or 8 factions. And this has left a lot of the old factions on the shelf. Like, a lot of them on the shelf. Including, obviously, your precious lizard men. So, they're actually not going to be in the game. They've got a book, they've got Legends rules, but you can't actually then take them to comp. They're never going to be updated, as I understand it anyway. So, as I think there's probably a few old fantasy players who are now a little bit like, oh, do I actually want to get into this game because my army's not going to be any good?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird situation because so I've been kind of watching a lot of this from the sidelines of that. For a lot of people that see this, it's super frustrating, like whether they were really excited to come back to a faction they really, really loved, or there's somebody that are new to the setting in the grand scheme of things, like maybe they got into it with Total War Warhammer or some other thing going on, like lore videos on YouTube or whatever. And so they never got to play fantasy when it was still alive. And so they were like, oh, I'm really excited to play Lizardmen or Dark Elves or whatever. And then feeling like that's kind of been snatched out from under them. But the thing for me is that on one hand, I think it's very good that Games Workshop kind of came out before everything was like purchasable and was like, hey, here's going to be the situation. Like, we're not intending on supporting these factions. We're really just wanting to focus on like these this first little group, and that's our intention right now for the foreseeable future, which I think is good.
It's honorable, at least.
Yeah. I will say that I'm in kind of a funny position personally, because I like, not in a nefarious sense, but like I just feel like Games Workshop is very much kind of lying in a sense of we've been down this road before, and they've said this before with prior games. Like a good example.
You have an example?
Yeah, so like when the new season of Blood Bowl started, when they brought back the actual tabletop game, they did the same thing where they came out and they said, hey, like we're going to be introducing new teams and we're going to do some other teams, but we're not going to be bringing back all of your favorite teams. Like we're going to do new things, but don't anticipate or expect to get all of your old teams back. That's not what we're planning to do. But then, 3 years later, 4 years later, as the game continued to make money and prove popular, eventually they got to the point where they're like, hey, look, Amazons. And hey, look, like they just started bringing back all the old teams that they were like, oh yeah, no, we're not going to do these. And I kind of feel like that's sort of the point they're at with the old world, where in my opinion, I think they're making the right decision, even though it's frustrating as a Lizardman player, because obviously I'm on the Legacy team.
Yeah, I'm a Dark Elf and High Elf player, so I feel the sting of it as well.
Yeah, but I do think that if they came out of the gate and were like, we're going to support all 16 factions, it would be too much. Like
it's a lot to do.
Yeah, especially because, like, really the only thing is like, oh, well, we're not, they're going to give you Legacy rules and they don't plan on updating them. And you can't take them to Games Workshop sponsored tournaments, which obviously that's only for GW sponsored tournaments. So, for your local clubs or tournaments, you can take them whenever you want. I am very curious if the fantasy community is going to kind of come together to try and
lobby?
Yeah, lobby some rules to try and keep the factions alive. But
like homebrew, like they did with Ninth Age.
Yeah, essentially. Because it's a tricky thing to do, because it would kind of require someone to sort of take the head that everyone would go, yeah, these rules are actually like balanced and fit with the systems. But it will depend on like how good or bad the Legacy rules are.
Yeah, and I think there's another part of me, and this is me being a little bit cynical, but hear me out. Bear in mind, look at the factions on that list. Lizardmen just got a refresh in Age of Sigmar as Seraphon. Vampire counts, Soulblight Gravelords have had a crap ton of new units. So, actually, for Seraphon and Soulblight players, they're allowing themselves to say, actually, we don't need to do anything to support Lizardmen and Vampire counts, because they've got a bunch of new models already, so don't expect anything new for them, because we've just done them for Age of Sigmar. You can still use those models, in the majority of cases, in your fantasy games, so just don't expect us to do anything with those ranges, and they've given themselves basically a breathing space to not update the rules, because they don't then need to worry about updating models because they've just done it. With the exception of like foot-mounted Manfred and Vlad and like a few bits and bobs here and there. You could argue the same with demons, because demons have had so many models over the past few years. And the rumour mill, and this is not leaks, this is pure rumour mill, speculates that this year Skaven and Malerian's Shadow Elves, the spiritual successors to Dark Elves, are in line for a major Age of Sigmar release. That is just a rumour. I have no evidence to support it. It's just a rumour. So it might be them saying, we're not supporting them for fantasy because we're doing a huge amount for them in AoS. So to prevent splitting the Dark Elf or making them buy stuff twice, hey, here's where you can play Dark Elves, Skaven, Lizardmen, Vampires, Demons. The only place that doesn't make sense is Chaos Dwarfs, and I do think they've missed the trick on Chaos Dwarfs. Bringing them back and making them a proper faction would have A, balanced Ravening Hordes and Forces of Fantasy, and B, given them a chance to really update that old Forge World range. Because Ogre Kingdoms, you can update them for AoS as well. Chaos Dwarves, you kind of can't.
Yeah, there's a lot of really, I don't want to call them conspiracy theories, but like there's a lot of really interesting just theories out of like why Games Workshop selected the factions they did, and why they're not supporting the ones they're not, because there's not really a great form of consistency to it.
Lore-wise, they've actually come up with, I think, 4 or 5 of them they've actually managed to explain pretty well within the lore, which is Lizardmen, Dark Elves, Vampire Counts, and Skaven.
Yeah, which I will say, like, the lore behind the Skaven it's a, like,
Patchy.
I kind of rolled my eyes pretty hard when I read it. of the idea of like, oh, well, the Skaven are in the Civil War, so they're not participating in what's going on in the world. But it's like the Skaven, there is a Civil War, it's true, and it's wrapping up to its climax. But at the same time, it's like Skaven are everywhere, like they're unavoidable.
But they can use that Civil War is wrapping up thing to do exactly like they did in Blood Bowl, and in 4 years' time say, hey, by the way, the Skaven are now the big threat in 3rd edition Old World or something.
Yeah, well, that's my hope, right? Is that I'm hoping that they are taking like what I think would be the best approach, which is, okay, here's our planned storyline. You know, we're going to start with the War in the Border Princes, which is the first storyline they've already announced. And it's going to like, you know, we're starting in 2276 of the Imperial calendar, which means that they've got 25 years in universe before we get to the end of the Great War against Chaos, which is a long time. You know, a quarter of a century is not something to sneeze at, especially in Warhammer Fantasy, where, you know, centuries are big deals.
I mean, in 40k terms, that's about 6 editions.
Yeah. So I really hope that they are kind of planning out all the different conflicts and storylines they want to tell. And as the setting hopefully continues to perform well, you know, they'll add in new factions. And granted, we already see this in that, you know, they've already added Grand Cathay onto the map, even though it doesn't show up on their usual map. If you go find the Grand Cathay community post, they've already like detailed out a lot of information about Cathay and a lot of the factions that live in Cathay. They've already, in the core rulebook that's coming out for this game, it's already confirmed that Grand Cathay and Kislev have their own chapters, which means...
Didn't they also say that Cathay was being announced as an actual army to play as initially?
Yeah.
Yes,
and I didn't see Kislev on the Forces of Fantasy list, which I'm actually, in hindsight, surprises me. Why aren't Kislev there?
I think in regards to Kislev, I think they might, because I don't know, because I haven't got the book, so they might be incorporated under the Empire army list, because they were originally, I know at the very least were in 5th, I know they were, so.
Yeah, so I can say with 100% certainty that the Kislev and Cathay are being treated as completely separate factions. But, because Kislev, when they first announced the Old World, the first thing they started with was Kislev, and that they were making new models for Kislev, and Kislev is going to be a separate range with like Ice Guard and the Bears, because they were, you know, doing all that for Total War. And what's interesting is we can see that their plans obviously changed, where the first map they showed off, they examined Kislev very much in detail. And it was
a lot further north.
Yeah, I think the original plan was to start in the north with Kislev, but then something changed, which I don't know what, which caused them to go, actually, no, we're going to start in the south with the Border Princes and Bretonnia. So my hope is that as the setting continues to release and hopefully sells well, because, you know, if it doesn't sell well, I don't think they're going to...
It's sold out.
Well, yeah, so far, so good. Granted, I think GW kind of grossly underestimated the interest, but
yeah, as usual.
What's going to be interesting to me is I really hope the goal is that as new campaigns come out, they'll release new factions to go along with it, and hopefully do like a good mix of not every, you know, Old World edition needs to have like, oh, we're going to do 3 brand new races, but maybe do a mix of like, all right, here's a legacy race that's now playable again with some new minis to go with it. And also there's going to be a brand new race this edition. So like if you go, so hypothetically, right? They start with the War in the Border Princes. And then let's say a few years down the line, you know, we're in the full on Great War, and they're like, okay, so now we're going to focus on the High Elves. What's going on in Ulthuan? And what's going on in Ulthuan during this time period is the Dark Elves invade Ulthuan.
Who's the Phoenix King at this time? Sorry, I should know this, but who's Phoenix King right now?
It's Finnebar. Same Phoenix King from regular Warhammer Fantasy.
Really? So Tyrion and Teclis are kicking around?
Yep, Tyrion and Teclis are already about... Teclis is the elf that the elves send to come help the Empire, and he establishes the Colleges of Magic and does a bunch of other stuff.
I know he does, and I know we're in a time pre-Colleges of Magic. I somehow thought in my head we were much earlier than that, because we haven't formed the Empire yet, not properly.
Well, the Empire is like, the Empire is at the end, very, very end of the, like, kind of past, almost, the time of Three Emperors, Magnus the Pious is alive. He just has not become Magnus the Pious. You know, he's just living in Nuln right now. But Magnus the Pious is the emperor who reunifies the empire after it's been all separated for centuries because of all the incidents that were the time of the Three Emperors, where a bunch of people were trying to be emperor at once.
We're only about, what, 250 years before the end times here?
Yes.
Are we?
Yep.
So, elves do live that long. I somehow thought in my head, and I don't know why, that the events with Tyrion and Teclis didn't kick off until much later down the timeline than this, and that's my bad. So that's good for me, because that means I can probably pick up Tyrion and Teclis for Old World, but I just somehow thought that we were way earlier than this, and I was hoping to, like, get to know what it was like before Finnabar and all of that. I thought
we'd have to go much further back.
Yeah. So is this around the point... So if I'm just talking as a High Elves player now because I'm being an idiot. So when High Elves come in, I should expect Tyrion and Teclis to be in this book, but lore-wise, they're currently in Ulthuan kicking Malekith's ass, right?
It's not Malekith anymore, it's Malarian now.
I know. I was going to correct myself in a minute.
It's going to be actually really funny to see. A part of me thinks with the Old World, they've kind of given up as far as, like, okay, we acknowledge we're just going to have to deal with using names we don't like to use because they're harder to copyright. Because, like, he's still going to be Malekith in the Old World. He doesn't go through legal name change until after the world blows up.
No, he has.
Oh, is he Malarian in the Old World?
According to Rem.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I haven't had a chance to peek at... I guess that would be in the core rulebook. That's going to be really interesting. But in any event, as far as what the High Elves are going to do when they initially show up, I think when you get the Arcane Journal for the High Elves going into the very, very first edition of the Old World, so like pretty early on, I will actually be kind of surprised if they have Tyrion and Teclis as playable. I don't think they will be. Because they're over on Ulthuan doing Ulthuan things, and I don't think they're going to focus on that at all. I think they're going to purely focus on what the elves are doing in the Old World, because they've done some interesting retcons in that they've made the elves have, or the High Elves in particular, have like active colonies in the Old World, which was not the case in the older lore. In the older lore, after the War of the Beard, the elves abandoned the Old World, and they basically never come back.
Until...
Except for the Wood Elves.
Yeah, so the War of the Beard goes on, the High Elves go home, everyone who stays becomes a Wood Elf, and then the elves become kind of a myth until the return of Teclis and the establishment of the Colleges of Magic. Have I got that right?
Yeah, that's a fairly appropriate way to put it. And then, but even then, like, you know, there's like elves that live in Marienburg, and there are elves that kind of like are diplomats and stuff, but there's no like true colony of the Aesir or the High Elves in the Old World. But this is now completely changing that, in that when we look at the map, there's actually several High Elf towers that are occupied by High Elves scattered
there's
around.
Two shields on the coast. There's two shields.
Yeah, and there you can see a couple of High Elf towers too, scattered around like the shores of Bretonnia and the shores of the Badlands. Which granted, it looks like the High Elves are going to get wrapped up in Cetra's War, because there is a High Elf tower, and if you look at it on the oldworld.com map, in the Badlands, it's right along the Xandri Road, which is the invasion route that Cetra takes north, and the High Elf tower is destroyed. It's smoking. So we are probably going to see High Elves get their faces kicked in by Cetra rather early in the storyline.
Yeah, okay.
But it's probably going to be a new set of High Elf characters who are in charge of these Lothern. I'm assuming they're going to be Lothern fleets, where, you know, it's like the Sea Guard, but with an actual presence. Which, to be fair, does actually make a lot of sense. That once like Bretonnia was established and the dwarves had like kind of calmed down to the extent that they're not actively trying to invade and kill elves at every opportunity, that the High Elves would return and take up some of their old ruins and, you know, tidy them up.
Of things.
Yeah, and have a presence. Because they do that all over the rest of the world, you know, with like the Tower of the Sun and the Tower of Dawn, the Tower of Dusk. that are scattered around, because the High Elves are really, really big on kind of being world police and trying to have a presence everywhere they can, especially along naval routes, because that's what allows them to be the preeminent sea power in the world.
Yep. They are still fantasy Britain.
Yeah. And it's gonna be very interesting. So I'm kind of expecting kind of like how they're introducing like little focuses within some of the factions, where it's like, it's not the Tomb Kings, right? You can't play the Tomb Kings. You can play the Tomb Legions of Khemri, which is a very specific group of Tomb Kings. Like, even if you pick up the Arcane Journal or Arcane Tome or whatever they're calling it, which is like the army book for the Tomb Kings, it only, as of right now, allows you to play as Khemri. You can play your sub-factions are like, okay, you can play regular Khemri, you can play like a very particular kind of royal host, which has like way more Tomb Princes and Tomb Kings, or you can play a mortuary cult focused sub-faction, so you're going to be more focused on like Lich Priests and Constructs, but you have to be Khemri within the rules.
For the uneducated, and I am one of them, I assumed that all the Tomb Kings come from Khemri. The Khemrian desert is where the Tomb Kings live. And that's me being uneducated, I know. But that's kind of like saying all High Elves come from, like, Lothern and Zafari, isn't it? Same idea.
Yes.
There's more to it than that.
Khemri is one, like, state, I guess, within all of Nehekara. So Nehekara is the nation. And you have the big desert, which is actually a collection of deserts, but it's collectively referred to as the land of the dead. And there's a whole bunch of tomb cities. I want to say there's somewhere around like 8 of them. But each of the tomb cities controls a vast amount of territory. So Khemri, which is one of the more northern ones, was kind of always seen as the capital, especially after Cetra took over, because Cetra went around and smacked the crap
over everyone.
Yeah, he ran everybody over and said, either you do what I tell you to, or I'll kill you.
He basically Imhotep, to use a 40k analogy, he did an Imhotep. He woke up, kicked everyone's butt, and made himself the preeminent leader of the faction.
Yes, and so what's the old world's doing at first, which is weird, because especially when you go onto their website, they have that interactive map, which is super fun, and if anyone hasn't messed with it yet, you should, because there's lots of things you can click on that tell you a lot of really fun information about what's going to be happening in the setting. But you'll see that Khemri is just one state, and like right next to Khemri you have Numis, which is one of the cities. You also have Zandri, which is
Numidia. That's where Neferata's from, isn't it?
Neferata is from Liberis. You got Liberis, which is where she is. You have Lamia, which is where Neferata is from, but nobody lives in Lamia. It's like a cursed place that they want to stay clean. But you've got Rysetra, Marak, Qatar, Kasabar, Bagar, Zandri. So like there's a whole bunch of different kingdoms. Khemri's just one of them. It's just that Khemri's where Cetra's from, and Cetra is invading the old world at the start of the setting. Like 2276 is literally, we are starting with Cetra's invasion.
Right, I'm with you. Okay. So yeah, apologies to the 40k only people who don't care about old world and have had to listen to that for 20 minutes. Now you know how the AoS people feel when we talk about 40k for an hour and a half at a time. But I think what's also interesting, and I think this is actually a tactical play on the part of the old world team, is they are deliberately not tapping the AoS market. I think the other thing with legacy factions, I mentioned earlier, like Lizardmen are in AoS, Vampires are in AoS, Demons are in AoS, Skaven are in AoS, Dark Elves are due to come into AoS. They've made a point of the factions that they're focusing on, with the possible exception of the Empire, because Cities of Sigmar stuff should carry over. They've deliberately picked a suite of factions that have had absolutely zero love from Age of Sigmar, and I'm not counting Lumineth as much as I want to, because I bloody love the Lumineth, but they are not the same as High Elves. You cannot transfer them over. They're pikemen, not spearmen. Get it right.
So I will say that there is an interesting thing they've done in that most of the factions that they're actually using for the old world most of them do not have an easy AoS equivalent anymore, because like the faction that they evolved into is now so different. where like you can't use Lumineth for high elves. They're just way too different. Using
the only one is the Empire and cities, I guess.
Even that I would not say anymore. That used to be the case. I would say yes. Now not as much.
Wood Elves and Kanothi?
No, there are no Kanothi models bar like 4.
Yeah, the Sylvaneth and the Wood Elves are only slightly related, where you have like Dryads and Treemen, and that's it. Everything else would not really transfer back over.
Yeah, and they've deliberately left the undead out. I think the nearest one is Orcs and Goblins, but the problem is that the Orcs and Goblins you have in Fantasy, the only ones that you can actually transfer back to Old World from AoS is the Gloomspite Gits, because Iron Jaws, Cruel Boys, and Bone Splitters kind of Kasaraj Oryx can transfer back. It's only really Orcs and Goblins that you could have an AoS army, but you'd need 3 of them to transfer back.
What about Ogres?
Ogres are a legacy race.
Exactly.
So it's not, but it doesn't fit always. Like Warriors of Chaos have gotten tons of new AoS models, but they are also in the old world and translate back and forth, no problem. Beastmen, same thing. You have the Beasts of Chaos in Age of Sigmar, and you have the Beastmen in Warhammer Fantasy.
There have been a grand total of 1 new Beastmen model for Age of Sigmar, let's point that out.
Yeah, they're using the exact same range as they did back in Old Fantasy. But it is very interesting, because like they're kind of, a lot of the factions have like scattered remnants of old minis that I assume will probably be usable, where it's like, if you're a Orc player, yeah, you can use Bone Splitters, because those are the exact same models that they were in Fantasy.
Black Orcs.
And Black Orcs, which are now in Age of Sigmar called Ard Boys. Those actually just got brand new models and are gorgeous now.
Yep, and Gloomspite Gits, all the Moonclan Grots and Squigs go back, with the possible exception of Mangle Squigs were in Fantasy. So I think all of Gloomspite Gits minus like the named character stuff goes back.
So it's going to be interesting to see what they decide to take back and what don't. Like Gloomspite Gits have gotten some new minis, like the Boingrot Bounders, which are Squig Riders that are armored and have like little lances. Those didn't exist in Fantasy, but they could have, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's going to be, for me, that's going to be the most interesting thing. Like probably the thing I dislike the most about the legacy races, because they released the base sizes for all the legacy races already, is that it seems like they took a pretty lazy approach to the legacy races, of that.
Of course they did.
Instead of assuming that you're going to be, like, take the Lizardmen, for example. Lizardmen just got, or Seraphon as they're known in Age of Sigmar, just got a completely brand new range, like almost from top to bottom. The vast majority of the models are new. And they could have released like all the base sizes saying, okay, we know you guys are buying the AoS models because we don't offer the old fantasy models anymore. So here are the base sizes, keeping in mind that you're going to be using the new Age of Sigmar ones, which newer models for Games Workshop tend to be larger.
So in the old days, a Saurus would fit on a 25 mil. Now I think it needed a 32 or a 40.
Yeah, so some units, they have increased the base size in a way where you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like Saurus going from 25 to 30, cool. But other ones didn't, and it feels kind of lazy. Like Croxagors now have a noticeably bigger sculpt. And instead of the Croxagors going from 40 to 50, which is what they should have done, they stayed at 40. Or like the Slan Mage Priest, which has a much bigger mini now.
Oh, yeah. And Lord Croak.
Yeah, should have gone from 50 millimeter to 60 millimeter, but they kept it at 50. So it's kind of a mess as far as like what increased in size and what stayed the same. But you know, I'm kind of trying my best to reserve all judgment until the 20th, when I really can get my hands on everything and break down what all I'm looking at. But even if you're not a fan of fantasy at all, like you have no relation to it, it's very, very interesting to watch and see how Games Workshop is going to navigate this, because it's a very unique situation.
Agreed. I admit, I probably am not going to be able/willing to buy back in to Old World. Like, if my Dark Elves were getting into the new game, I would probably pick up a copy of the rules online and play it. But I'm currently of a mindset of there's actually nothing here for me. So because my high elves are now Lumineth. I still have a lot of high elves locking around, but not enough to put an army together. And my Lumineth do not transfer back. Like, I could probably get away with using Dawn Riders as Silver Helms, and I could probably make the archers transfer, but if your spearmen don't transfer back because they're pikemen, you cannot play the game. Never mind the fact that Phoenix Guard, White Lions, Sword Masters are now Blade Lords, but they've got 2 swords now instead of 1 in some cases. I don't know. I don't think there's anything for me at the moment in fantasy.
I would agree. Like, if I was a Lumineth player that was also an old High Elf player, at the very least, I would wait until the Arcane Journal comes out, where they actually, like, you know, delve into your rules in depth, because, you know, you're just going to have the basic bitch rules from the core rulebook. But I think for everyone, that's going to be kind of the thing of, you know, trying to read things in advance, see if you vibe with it. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do for the old world yet, of that. Like, I'm planning to use Seraphon for, like, my local casual games, but literally all I'm going to do for that is I'm going to 3D print or like dig out old bases that are the right sizes, and I'm just going to have the fantasy bases like underneath the Seraphon bases. Just like, I'm not going to rebase any of my units because you know, Seraphon.
Why would you?
Yeah, so I think in the long term, I'll probably end up picking an army just for fantasy, but that's only if I end up like really vibing with the rules, and I feel like Games Workshop is going to support the game in a way that I enjoy, which I don't know that yet.
No, you don't, which is completely fair.
It's like, don't get me wrong, I am extremely excited for the return of the old world. I'm really happy that it seems to have sold very aggressively and very well initially. I hope they can keep it up. I do think that there is a very disjointed view on the game, that Games Workshop seems to purely be looking at it as a very niche specialist game, whereas the global community seems to be looking at it as, no, this is the resurrection of Warhammer Fantasy, therefore this is like a mainline title release. And those are 2 very, very different perspectives.
Yeah, it's worth noting, actually, speaking of sales, that Forces of Fantasy and the Britannia book have sold out online. They're temporarily out of stock. Ravening Hordes and Tomb Kings have not. I'm just browsing the web store at the moment, trying to find these data cards. These base sizes than the document that you were referring to just now.
So, fun fact about that, you won't find it there, because where it's posted is, you might think, oh, surely that's on like Warhammer Community or something. No. It's in a comment thread on the official Warhammer Games Workshop Facebook page, and that is the only place it has been officially published.
Yeah. Worth noting that the entire Tomb Kings range is currently out of stock except Cetra, ironically. And in Britannia, everything is out of stock except Pegasus Knights. So that, just to give you context of how it's selling, there you go.
Yeah, it's pretty much the same here in the United States, where literally everything for Britannia is out of stock except for Pegasus Knights.
Pegasus Knight models are shit and should have been re-updated. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
if you're going to update anything, update the Pegasus Knights kit.
It's very strange how they've decided what to update and what not to. For us, the Tomb Kings are sold out except for the big constructs, the starter
War
box,
Sphinx and the Necro Sphinx.
Yeah, we still have the big Sphinxes in stock, and we still have
They're the best models going. They're amazing. Why not? The Necro Sphinx is so cool, with the Cambrian War Sphinx is like my favorite Tomb Kings model. Why?
Yeah, what was interesting is over here, Cetra sold out. All of the cavalry, the Necropolis Knights and the Sepulchral Stalkers, which are a dual kit, sold out. The Lich Priest is sold out, and all the shop tier sold out.
Fair enough.
Like, it's weird. Like, it's very interesting to see for me what all is the thing that frustrated me is that the core rulebook sold out super fast.
Yeah, because everyone needed it.
Yeah, like I was in pre-orders. I managed to get my hands on literally everything except the core rulebook. Like I even got like the limited edition Black Library book, but I was not able to get a core rulebook. But I have secured picking one up on the 20th. But it's difficult trying to figure out, like, oh wow, did the game just sell that amazingly well, or is it more that Games Workshop just did not make nearly enough stuff because either they couldn't or because they just grossly underestimated interest?
Yeah, I think the problem that I think they've probably based their stock run on how Heresy 2.0 performed, which probably wasn't that well, because most of the people who would have bought the Heresy stuff were either already in or had a set of Marines they could probably nick back. And so the Corvus Marines, because especially it's Beakies, no one cares that much about Beakies. Sorry, all Beaky players. But I don't think they probably had as good a run or as much a demand for Heresy, and they've treated it like Heresy in terms of this is a spin-off game of our Core 2, which is AoS and 40k. This is our AoS spin-off. We're going to sell it at a stock price and a stock range like Heresy, and actually they completely forgot that fantasy people existed and gone, we want everything.
Yeah, well, especially because I imagine, weirdly, well, I guess it's not that weird if you really think about it, the overlap between like 40k players and Horus Heresy players is probably significantly larger than the overlap between AoS players and fantasy players.
Yeah, because for the exact reason I mentioned 10 minutes ago, that everything that's come out for fantasy, AoS players have no access to. So the people who are AoS players are not incentivized to try Old World because their factions aren't there.
Yeah, which is very weird. Like, I was definitely one of the people where I thought the goal was going to be, all right, we're going to get books out really fast for the factions that are functionally the exact same, because now we're double dipping, and people are going to want to play, like, you know, they're going to have to figure out base stuff, but other than that, like, oh, you want to play vampire counts? Look at all these cool vampires we've got. Or like, basically the whole range it's the exact same. It just has more. Like, sure, there'd be certain units that wouldn't transfer over, but like, you know, the basics,
the
like,
range would.
Yeah. Same thing for the Seraphon. And so I'm not really sure what their strategy is on that. It feels very weird for them to kind of kneecap themselves to say like, oh, well, we don't want people playing factions that work in both systems, because that won't work, because you have stuff like the Warriors of Chaos and the Beastmen, and there are going to be people that, like, when the Empire gets their new models, I would be willing to bet $1 million there's going to be people that buy that range and use it as Cities of Sigmar.
And vice versa.
Yeah, or when the High Elves get new minis, there's going to be players that go, oh, I prefer this aesthetic, so I'm going to use these for my Lumineth.
Yeah, I think, but I said earlier, and I think I stand by it, that I'm going to add to it now, by not putting the AoS factions front and center, they're able to gauge more effectively what the actual appetite for fantasy is. Because let's think, they picked the two most, oh my god, they murdered them and Sigmar's awful because they didn't bring Tomb Kings and Britannia back. And yes, I know Fleshy Courts are a thing, and yes, I know Ossiarch's a thing, but shush.
Yeah, not the same.
No, they picked the two most fantasy factions going, and deliberately, as you could put it one way, kneecap themselves by not crossing over to Sigmar where possible. But by doing that, they are able to gauge what is the actual appetite for fantasy versus what is the, you know, how many Sigmar players have given our new game a try and thus now play 2 games. Because they're trying to capture the old fantasy market and the really high complex strategy game players. They're not trying to capture the Sigmar players. And that way, if Old World sells well, they can then say, hey, Sigmar players, did you know we have another game that's set in the universe before yours and now your army's got a book for it? They can tempt the AoS players in later and do the double dip, but first, let's get the fantasy crowd back rather than pissing them off by doing, let's say, I don't know, Lizardmen versus Skaven as your first battle box and doing the Siege of Chichen Itza. I know it's not Chichen Itza, but you know the battle I mean.
Yeah.
And doing that, and then say, well, where's all the fantasy stuff? Why should I bother with this? I'm going to set my army on fire again.
Yeah. I can't imagine how that dude feels all these years later. Yeah, no, I think that's a very good way to look at it. And it makes me excited for the future. Like, even though, you know, obviously I would love for Lizardmen to be now, and I want competitive rules for Lizardmen so I can take them So I don't have to worry about like dealing with legacy rules, because nobody likes dealing with legacy rules.
No,
But-
index rules suck, and so do legacy rules.
Yeah, but that being said, I am willing to be patient if it means that the overall setting is going to be healthier for it.
Yeah, there's one last thing I did want to ask you about, as your opinion on the way they've handled Arcane Journals. Because I am of a mindset of, I don't think there is a point. Well, there is a point, but I also think the way they've done Arcane Journals is a little bit taking the piss. Like, Remleiz and I were talking last week on the podcast about the codex problem, about codices being less useful for anything other than this is the rules of your army. And we sort of, in our comments, are full of people talking about what they think a codex should be. An Arcane Journal is essentially, here is a codex supplement. You can play the game without it, but if you want the full immersive experience with all the magic items and the optional extra army list, buy another 20 quid, 30 quid book. Well, it's about 16 quid, I think I saw just now. I find that a little bit cheeky, that if you want to play your army properly, you have to buy 3 books right out the gate. And I don't know how you feel about that, whether the way they've done it with rules compendium and supplement is better versus here's a giant pile of index rules like 40k does and the rule book, and then everyone gets a book down the line. I don't know how you feel about it.
So what they did is literally what they did to us when Age of Sigmar launched. So it didn't really surprise me. It's kind of like, where Age of Sigmar did the exact same thing, where they brought out, when the game started, they launched with the core rulebook, and then they launched Grand Allegiance books. So there was a Chaos book, an Order
Yes,
book,
there was, yeah.
a Death book, and a Destruction book. And then you also then got your army books as they came out.
But the difference in the AoS scenario is that when a battle tome came out, it replaced the Grand Alliance book. Here, as a Bretonnian player, you must buy Forces of Fantasy to play Bretonnia, but if you want to play Bretonnia properly, you must also buy the Arcane Journal, and that will stay for everyone. It's not like the Arcane Journal Bretonnia is what you buy, and you don't need to buy Forces of Fantasy because you've got it right out the gate. You have to buy both.
Yeah, I do think that's dumb. I feel like the Arcane Journals, especially because they're softbacks, I don't feel like the Arcane Journals are the like long-term plans going into like later editions of the setting. To me, it really feels like they're like, all right, we put the absolutely critical necessary bits of all of your first edition army books into the Forces of Fantasy
FOF
book.
and Ravening Hordes, yeah.
Yeah. And then we're going to release your spell lores and your magic items, your special characters, and your lore. So the other half of your army books are going to be in these little flimsy paperback books. Because, I mean, they haven't released paperback rule books since, like...
5th edition 40k.
Yeah, like 6th edition fantasy was the last... Or no, 7th edition fantasy was the last time we had paperbacks.
I thought fantasy had softback all the way to its death.
Nope, we had hardback in 8th edition.
Oh, fair enough, my bad.
The very last edition. But was hardback. But yeah, I the only thing I don't like is that the Bretonnian Tomb Kings are it's so weird. Like, I feel like the Arcane Tomes should have just had all the rules. That way it's like, oh, if you want to play Bretonnia and you only want to play Bretonnia, you don't need the Forces of Fantasy book. Because it feels very unnecessary to like be like, unless the only thing I can think is that if in the Forces of Fantasy in the Ravening Hordes book, they introduce like a bunch of universal rules, but then those should be part of the core rule book at that point.
Correct.
So I'm not sure what, granted, I don't have them yet, so I haven't had the ability to sit down and actually leaf through them and figure out what each book is supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
I do think it's unnecessary. Absolutely. I think that, I don't know, it's a weird situation of like, I like the idea that if your goal is just you want to play around with the different factions and you don't know what you want to play, you literally get like Forces of Fantasy, and you've got all the good guys. Like, you're good to go. And it's got all of the rules, it's got all the points. Like, it's basically all of their army books slapped into one book, so you can do a lot of really cool experimentation and not have to buy every single goddamn army book. But at the same time, it feels silly that the Arcane Journal just didn't have that stuff also in it, so that if you only want to do those 2 factions that are coming out first, you could just ignore it. I don't know. It's a weird decision. I'm curious if they're going to keep doing that. Because like, it's not a good it's not a good
Business
look
model.
for them to come out and be like, look, brand new setting that already starts out with book bloat.
Yeah, like literally it's book bloat right out the gate, and that 40k players can tell you, fuck that.
Yeah, like Age of Sigmar is awesome now because we get the only thing you need to play Age of Sigmar in your tournament is you get your little every 6-month book, because this little the
General's Handbook.
Yeah, because it's got all of the competitive rules and all the core rules, none of the fluff, and it's very small and compact. It's super easy to get, and then your army book. That's it. Like, you're done.
But do the Dawnbringers books not contain rules apart from War Scrolls for the new models?
No. It's literally the only reason you would need a Dawnbringer book is for the new War Scrolls, which you would probably have on your phone.
Yeah, fair enough. I wasn't sure if they'd put like they did in Psychic Awakening for fantasy, where it's like, here's a giant pile of extra relics and extra stratagems you can take. Fuck you if you don't want to play comp.
Yeah, only if you take the. So one of the things they did that I actually really like is that if you want to take the Dawnbringer, they do introduce new rules for Dawnbringer, but they're limited to, like, you have to take a sub faction that's introduced in that book. So it's like, so we came up with some new stuff for, like, ogres in the most recent book for the new Gorger models. But if you want to take those rules, you have to take a very specific sub-faction. And if you do that, you actually don't need the ogre book. You just need the Dawnbringer book. Like, it is your army book at that point.
Yeah, because when they did it last time round, and I'm thinking particularly of, what was the series? Not Malign Portents, the one after that one that had Kragnos.
Broken Realms. Broken Realms.
That's the one. Like, Broken Realms Marathi had rules for Har-Kiron as a whole in separate city of Sigmar that could take Daughters of Cain allies, but you still had to buy the City of Sigmar book, and it was really irritating.
Yeah, the newer books, like the sub-factions, the vast majority of them nobody takes because they're so focused.
Small.
Because they're like, it's like if you take the, like there's a Caradron Overlord one in the in the second Dawnbringer book, I think. And it's like, yeah, okay, if you're going to take this sub-faction, you're only allowed to take these specific units from the Caradron Overlord book. Like, you can't take any ships. You have to take all these, like, really small things. So
right,
like,
I see.
Now, they have some, like, bonkers rules, but, like, most people don't take them because they're so limiting roster-wise.
Yeah, I understand. I just wanted to double check that, GW had actually learnt their lesson. So
yeah, and
good.
like maybe some of them require you to have the army book as well, but like most of them have all the relevant rules like right there.
Good, that is good. Right. Should we talk about something that isn't old world now? Because I think our viewer retention rate was probably about 14% through that. So, yeah, Remleiz, you might want to put a time skip in there for people who don't want to...
I think I should get a word in this time.
To be fair, you could have butted in at any point.
Be assertive.
I tried multiple times and you just kept going like a pair of old ladies.
We didn't hear you. Did you just cut out? Because we didn't hear you. We didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Right.
Well,
so
let's talk about something a bit more 40k related with the store anniversary miniatures, which include a model for Age of Sigmar and a model for 40k. And for 40k, I imagine it's one you're very much after, Neve, because it is a Tau Ethereal invoking the elements.
I am so annoyed because this is a brilliant miniature, but it's an ethereal, and I play Farsight. Like, exclusively Farsight. Like, most of my armies have Farsight in it, so I can't take it in my army. But the mini is so bloody cool.
It really is. Even if it does have the PlayStation buttons on its spear, but...
yeah,
they represent the casts.
The way they represent the cast is really funny. It's like, really, y'all couldn't come up with anything better than... It really felt like someone just looked at a PlayStation controller and was like, that'll work.
Yeah, except they've changed X to diamond.
Mm.
But yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I do like how it looks. It very much... in a way, it kind of reminds me of like, you know that picture of Farsight out of his battle suit? It reminds me of like a gender bent version of that. No, the official art.
Oh, is it official? Oh, yeah, it's official art. Sorry, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a gender bent version of that.
Because it is very, very good.
Maybe it's the colours, yeah.
Yeah, it's I love this mini, and I don't have a store near me with the exception of Warhammer World, but going to Warhammer World is an expedition. So if I get the chance to pick this up, I absolutely will, but I don't know if I'm going to get the chance. So I'll keep an eye out and hopefully I don't get scalped too hard.
Fair enough. And the other model that's available for the store anniversary is a new Fire Slayer that holds a giant key and has a giant key notch in his axe. So
this is the idea behind the key notch is actually that's a tactical maneuver, because the idea with the latchkey grand axes and latchkey axes is that you use your axe to catch your opponent's weapon in the latch like a key, and then you twist so that you rip the weapon out of their hand, leaving them completely vulnerable.
Also, like, hilariously, yeah, they also do hilariously actually function as keys though in the magma holds.
Oh right, yes, of course, I forgot that bit.
For the most like important vaults, or like where the like core flame is hidden.
But yes, it is a very, very pretty cape. I agree with you.
Yeah, the magma draught scale cape looks amazing.
Yeah, to be fair, did you remember the Fire Slayers warband they did not that long ago, like the Drake Hunters?
Yes, they are. It's one of my favorite Warcry warbands. They've revealed just behind the Chameleon Skinks.
Oh, I had a great idea regarding this Fire Slayers cape. Imagine that cape on the back of like a salamander captain.
It's going to be more like
a bit short.
Yeah, it's going to be more like
if you put it just under the backpack.
Under the backpack, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, that could work.
Yeah,
that
all right.
could genuinely work.
All right, some converter out there, please start cooking. That sounds like a good idea.
It probably wouldn't be super difficult, especially if you have a backpack kind of covering the top half of it to sort of green stuff it to make it look like the cape just goes up to the shoulders under the backpack.
Yeah.
You can also give them the axe as well because it's on fire.
I will say, if GW ever gets their crap together and makes it where the Salamander range actually has some of the supposed Salamander dragon monsters from their homeworld as minis, I might consider getting them.
Another idea: use that axe for a Salamander Librarian as a force axe because it's wreathed in fire. Yeah. That could work. Yeah,
and you could and unlocking the Librarium. Yeah, I'll buy it. I'll buy that for $1.
I need to watch RoboCop again. The original one, not the crappy remake.
Yeah, I thought you'd get that reference. Also, heads up, by the time this episode is over, this episode is out, this will be over, but there is a bunch of made-to-order stuff currently available, including, but not limited to, Huron Blackheart and the Iron Warriors Warsmith.
Both versions.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Yep.
So, I'd appreciate, obviously, for the viewers, it's a bit late, but I just want to make sure that you both have seen it in case you want to have a quick pop over and have a look, because, you're not going to get another chance to get Huron Blackheart, I suspect.
Which makes
they really need to do a new Huron Blackheart.
Could we get a new version of his model, perhaps? Probably not. Oh, God, I hope so.
I mean, they've been saying that for years, because, God, he needs one now.
He does. Because do you remember when the Rumor Engine came out, which ended up being for Vashtor, but what we first saw looked like a lightning claw with like a built-in flamer, and then we all thought, oh my God, it's going to be Huron Blackheart. No,
yeah, I remember that. I remember that in the Rumor Engine.
Who the fuck's this guy?
Yeah, well, he was the forerunner for the presumably going to be coming soon Dark Mechanicus faction, because for God's sake, just do it.
Yeah, Vashtor definitely, he's just kind of there. Without the Dark Mechanicus.
He doesn't belong in the Space Marine Codex. He doesn't.
No, Dark Mechanicus. It kind of reminds me of when they initially released the death range for Age of Sigmar. Archon the Black is just kind of there. He's just kind of hanging around. And then they released Ossiarch Bone Reapers, and it's he fits so good here. He just fit in like a glove. And I hope they do that with Vashtor and the Dark Mechanicus.
Same with Neferata, to be fair, with her and Manfred with Soulblight. They didn't really have a home until Soulblight got properly done. I know they had models, but still.
Yeah, they've done that a couple times where they release a big bad mini who's a big special character. And it's this mini's nice, but they don't really fit anything, really. Like that's kind of how I feel like.
Kragnos.
Yeah, I was literally about to say Kragnos. Like there are hints in the most recent book and some short stories they've been releasing that Kragnos' species is not actually wiped out like he thought it was. Or he thinks it is because Gobsprak is an asshole and is purposely hiding it from him. But like I would love to get a new destruction race that isn't just greenskins. And like actually Kragnos like looks like he's a part of it. That would be nice.
And make them so. I know Sons of
Come on,
Behemoth exists.
Fimir. Bring us a whole Fimir range. Come on, Fimir.
Oh god, I want Fimir so bad.
Are they the cat people or the fish people?
They're the Cyclops
lizard people.
Yeah,
Ah,
they're the mist dwelling swamp cold mire cyclopean.
The Irish lizard men, basically.
Yeah, they're based on the
Irish lizard men.
Fomorians.
I mean, they'd be perfect as a alongside. They'd been perfect as if you didn't want to make them a full faction. Put them in the Cruel Boys book as like pets.
You know, funny enough, when the Cruel Boys were getting teased, everybody, myself included, everybody thought it was Fimir. And we were so excited.
Yeah.
And then they're
I
like,
remember
Cruel Boys.
that,
And I was
yeah.
like, okay, these are cool, but not what I wanted.
No, they're not. Sorry, but compared to Iron Jaws, Cruel
The
Boys
baby
suck.
legs.
I love Cruel Boys. I love them very, very much.
Conceptually,
I
lore-wise,
hate
I think they're fine, but minis-wise, the Iron Jaws are like levels above.
I like...
Basically, we were after Fimir. We were after Fimir, and what we got were a bunch of Urukai.
Yeah, they do look very Lord of the Rings orcish. I like them a lot. I'm really hoping that they kind of teased in one of the old world things that they're bringing back a lot of the races that existed like a really long time ago, but kind of got left by the wayside as the editions advanced and the world kind of got more cohesive.
So why aren't they doing Chaos Dwarves?
Well, I think they are going to do Chaos Dwarves eventually.
Yeah, because they did tease that with the Hashut warband for Warcry, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, the Chaos Dwarves flat out exist in Age of Sigmar. They've showed up.
Legions of Asgore, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they make the weapons for the Hobgrots. They make their grenades.
Yes. The
Hobgrot slitters in Cruel Boys.
Yeah, the Hobgrots, you get a lot of lore about them. The Horns of Hashut, which are a Warcry warband, obviously talk about them because Hashut is still around. And they also...
Oh shit, I just realised. Because Games Workshop and Forge World merged into one, can you still download the actual rules for Chaos Dwarves in Age of Sigmar?
They haven't been... I don't think they've been updated for AOS 3.
No, they haven't. They're a legacy race. But, I mean, they have rules, they just haven't been touched in forever.
Yeah, I remember actually one of my friends actually had a Chaos Dwarves army. I don't know where they got the models from or how they got them, but they actually played Chaos Dwarves for a while during AOS 1 in the old days before armies got redone, and they used to dumpster all over my Dark Elves because they all had rend and they all had like stupid armor and some other bollocks, and magic dwarves as well was really irritating. They actually were quite good in the index era of AOS 1. Now they're dog crap. So, yeah.
They've been building up very slowly to, I'm pretty sure that when, not if, but when they do a new Chaos race for AOS, it's gonna be the Chaos Dwarves, which are the Zardwarden. Because they flat out show up in Wrath of the Everchosen, which Wrath of the Everchosen was the story...
With Archaon and Nagat when Catacross tried to knock over the Varanspire.
Yes, yeah, it's when Catacross and Arcane throw down, because there's a big fight between Catacross, Lady Elinder, versus the Chaos Dwarves, because they're defending the foundries and forges of the Varanspire. So there's like a big fight between them. Of course, they're kind of like a little loosey-goosey on the details of what exactly the Zardwarden unleash, but we know that they're there, they fight, they lose, because Catacross blows up a bunch of the forges and foundries. And then, of course, as he's marching up to the actual Varanspire itself, that's when Archaon finally gets back.
Yeah, and actually, in Broken Realms Marathi, they went hunting for the... I've forgotten the name of the Realm Stone now. Varanite, that's it. And they managed to skirt around the Chaos Dwarves in Broken Realms Marathi. They weren't there, which is a little unfortunate, because that would have been a perfect opportunity.
Yeah, so I deeply suspect the goal is to introduce them. I don't know when exactly. It's looking like 4th edition AOS is going to be featuring a lot of Chaos as the big bads, because the Skaven are very heavily being built up. Like if you read through the Dawnbringer Crusades, there's actually a lot of Skaven stuff happening in the background. And the Skaven, though it's hilarious because the Skaven, according to their most recent lore in 3rd edition, they're about to kick off a civil war again.
Well, Skaven's got a Skaven.
Yeah, Skaven's got a Skaven. So it's going to be interesting if them kicking off their civil war is what somehow leads to them being the big bads of 4th edition, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was hoping it would end up being like Order Civil War with Malarian coming in, and Marathi still owns Harkuron, and Sigmar's not happy about it.
Yeah, I mean that could well be what ends up happening, is that if the Skaven kind of unleash a bunch of havoc and cause chaos to start breaking down due to everyone backstabbing each other, that might allow Order to start slapping one another as well.
Yeah. But we'll see. If you want to know more about what is actually happening and don't just want to listen to 3 randos on the internet and make random guesses, how about you check out the Las Vegas Open preview on the 19th of this month, which actually at the time of release is on Friday or Thursday if you live on the West Coast. So, this is a reveal session for 40k, AoS, Heresy, Warcry, Underworlds, and Kill Team. I understand why there's no Old World there, but I think there should still be, maybe sort of hinting at a roadmap or something, but I don't know, that's personal. So this is kicking off at 9 o'clock West Coast time, midnight East Coast time, sorry New Yorkers, and 5 o'clock on Friday morning for those in the UK. Now I'm happy about that because I have a 5:30 alarm to get up for work. I'll just set it half an hour earlier and therefore get up and watch it while I make my breakfast and go to work. That's perfect for me, but sorry UK people who have actual normal sleeping hours.
Yeah, it's like it's pretty much a miserable time for almost everyone. Like the time of what time they're starting the show at.
They also actually put a teaser image at the bottom of that article, which, to be honest, looking at it, I would have told you that was a Tomb King's model, but, it's not skeletal enough.
Yeah,
But it is a Sphinx cat, though.
Exactly, that's why I would have said it.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it...
Cities?
I'm almost thinking Soulblight Gravelords.
Again? Will they stop making more bloody vampires? For God's sake, give someone else a go.
Never. But, because they're like, no, it's easy money. That being said, I could also see it maybe being like, Eldar, maybe.
The stick looks too fantasy-y, not sci-fi-y, to me, personally.
I have no idea.
Could even be bloody Underworlds, so, who knows?
That's very true. That's true. It could be a new Underworlds warband.
Yeah, but yes, if you are awake at these stupid hours or are lucky enough to live in Australia or the Far East and have an actual reasonable time to watch this, I mean, for the Aussies, if you clock off at 4 o'clock and watch the stream, it's perfect. You clock off for Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock, start the stream. Problem is, most people probably clock off at 5, so, good luck. Anyone want to make any predictions?
Do you know what I'm hoping? Is this just going to be just for models, is it?
So, we don't know. I would not be surprised if they reveal the next Dawnbringers book, because Sharan's book is about to hit the shelf, but models and or books.
Because if they are going to reveal books, I'm going to make a prediction, purely because we've been waiting 2 bloody years for it now. Horus's Primarch novel.
That would be nice.
Because Sanguinius, which was the penultimate one, that came out in 2022.
Was it that long ago?
Yes.
Bloody hell.
It was like August 2022.
Yeah, but I think what we're going to see is, those New Year teaser videos from not that long ago? I think we're going to see each...
Croot.
I really hope it's the Croot, but I'm trying to remember who's next on the 40k roadmap, whether it's Orcs, Tau, or Custodes.
I think it's Orcs.
Yeah, it'll probably be an
yeah,
because
it's that they showed the silhouette of that like Big Mech, right?
Yeah, the Big Mech, the Croot Cavalry, and what we think is a Custodian character. And then the AoS one had what I think is Marauder Horseman, as well as something Elvish, and a Nighthorn. Danny DeVito.
Yeah, because he had the 2 guns going. So anyway, I started blasting. That guy.
Oh, yes. Yep. I remember now.
I started blasting.
So yeah, I think it'll be some
pistols. Yeah,
I think it'll be something from those. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if it is Orcs or Custodes. To be honest, it won't be Tau. I won't get my hopes up about it being Tau because I refuse. I know it's coming. I've actually just been online and bought from secondhand a bunch of Croot and stuff to get ready, but
next codex is actually Dark Angels, and then it's Orcs.
But yeah, we've already seen all the Dark Angels range now, so Orcs.
Dark Angels, Orcs, then Custodes, then Tau, then Chaos Space Marines.
Ugh, fine. But yeah, like I've actually been on like eBay and Facebook Marketplace and stuff and shopping around to try and find Croot. And let me tell you, it's hard to find people selling Croot secondhand. It's really difficult. But I've managed to get myself a box of carnivores, and I'm negotiating on some Crootox, some Hounds, and some Shaper. And a Shaper, because I get the feeling that if they're not going to redo the Croot range, they're going to add more Croot stuff, and then anyone who is selling Croot secondhand is going to put the price up about 50%. So I'm trying to get in early and get some Croot before they put the prices up.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so my prediction is that the Warcry Warband is going to be Nighthaunt. It's going to be Nighthaunt versus Lumineth. That's been a really solid rumor I've been hearing about. It's going to be Lumineth versus Nighthaunt as the Warcry.
Lumineth don't have a dedicated warband. Yeah, that's fair.
And if you watch the Age of Sigmar 2024 video, like one of the first
with the fans.
Yeah, with the big two-handed weapon, that's 1 billion% Nighthaunt.
Yeah, but there's also the guy with the fans who people weren't sure it looked elvish or Slaneshi.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's gonna be Lumineth. I think those two are gonna be fighting as two new warbands.
And I saw Marauder Horsemen in there, like Dark Oath Cavalry.
Yep, that is what it looks like to me, which I would be super excited about because the
Agreed.
old Marauder Horsemen are sad looking.
Yeah, to be honest, ever since they did the Dark Oath, what was it? The Dark Oath Chieftain, the woman from Malign Portents, like that's AOS 1's death knolls in 2018. Like they haven't actually properly done the Dark Oath, even though they put the first model out nearly over 6 years ago.
Yeah, the only Dark Oath is you have the Dark Oath War Queen, the Dark Oath Chieftain, which is another hero, and then the Dark Oath
Warcry Warband, whatever their name is.
Yeah, and that's it. It's just those three. Which is weird because, like, even you'd figure, like, oh, well, surely all the Marauder units have the Dark Oath keyword so you can use them. No, they don't. Marauders don't have the Dark Oath keyword.
Just retire the bloody Marauder kit, replace Marauder Horsemen, and then actually, do you know what? Make a break-off book. You know, they won't do Lost in the Damn 40k. Do it for AOS. Make Dark Oath a separate fucking faction. Why not?
Yeah, I feel like the silhouettes, the guy with the lantern and the guy with the guns, I feel like those are going to be the Underworld's warband. I'm hoping it's going to be a Free Cities Underworld warband. That would be nice. We haven't gotten one of those yet.
Isn't that? Wait, no, that's Warcry, the one fighting the Gorges. Sorry, got my wires crossed.
Yeah. So I would love like a Witch Hunter and maybe a couple.
I
of
tell you
things.
what though, if that Croot Cavalry mini is, hey, we made a new kill team. Actually, no, they've already got the Croot Farstalkers, it's fine. So luckily it won't be that, because the Croot Farstalkers warband's already there, but oh my god, if they just put more Croot in Kill Team and didn't update the codex to put more auxiliaries in, I would be pissed.
They come in from left field and are like, look, Croot Necromunda!
If they do something with Croot that isn't update the range and put more auxiliaries, or make a break off Dogs of War Tower auxiliary codex, I will be so annoyed, because at this point, I'm like, Croot. Like, I've been playing my Tau, and I'm like, this army needs Croot. I need to put some Croot in this army. How do Croot work in this army? How can I make Croot fit in this army? Like, Croot rules are dog shit, but I just want more Croot.
Croot are legit one of the coolest little, like, sub-factions in the game.
Yes! So why have they been stuck with dog shit units from 25 years ago for so fucking long?
Because that would cut into our Space Marine budget.
Annoyingly.
Remember, we are literally coming up on the cusp of the 30th anniversary of the Warp Spider range.
Yeah, that's true.
Literally, they turn 30 this year.
Jesus.
In fact, literally, I think it's like in 2 months' time. Let me just double check, because I actually posted the tweet about it. In 2 months' time, they turn 30 years old.
How old are the Phoenix Lords, like Fuegan and Malgan Ra now? No, Malgan Ra's been redone. Fuegan and, like, Baharoth now. Yeah,
they're about the same age.
Yeah, I thought they were. I think they're the only ones left now, is just that little bit of Eldar. I don't think the Space Walls are all No, they've got that Rune Priest, haven't they?
I think they discontinued that one now.
Yeah. Is there anything else left now that's a hangover from the 90s? Like,
is Corbulo still available?
No, he's dead.
For the Blood Angel?
I think he's
Corbulo.
dead. No,
I know
wait, I'm getting mixed up with
Tycho's
Tycho. Tycho's dead. Is Corbulo? No, Corbulo isn't dead. What am I saying?
Like, does he have a model still available?
Not a clue.
We need to probably check. Probably need to check on Games Workshop's website. Hang on, let me just have a look. Corbulo's not available on the Games Workshop web store, so looks like that one's done. I'm gonna have a quick look, browse through the range, just to see.
Yeah, 404. If you click on it, there's an old link to his mini on an old Loremasters article, actually. If you click it, it's 404 page not found. So, yeah.
So they discontinued him, yeah.
So is the Sanguinary Priest, actually. That's a 2014 one. Apparently that's 404 page not found. Hang on. Let me dig a second. You keep looking, I'll keep digging.
But yeah, Phoenix Lords, definitely.
No results.
Warp Spiders, yeah, they're still available on the web store. 30 quid, like, what, £1 for every year in their existence.
Yeah, there's a Sanguinary Priest, Chaplain with Jump Pack. Oh god, that's an old mini.
For some reason, when you type in Phoenix Lords, it comes up with Argyle Tal and Lord Croak.
Oops. Asterath, Lamartes. I wish they would redo
And Night Lord's blue paint.
All the things you expect to find when you go looking for Phoenix Lords. But they're not going to have that as a keyword, are they? They're not going to be there. You have to search them by name.
Right, Fugan, one item, and it doesn't even show it.
Yeah, Blood Angel's entire...
No, Fugan's just, Fugan Orange. Not the model Fugan. Fugan's not there.
Really? That surprises me. Xenos, Eldari... I'm just going to scroll down the range a second, in case that...
Baharov Blue's there, but Baharov himself is not, from what... He doesn't come up on a search.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling down the entire literal product range, just in case we missed something. No, the Phantom Titan's here.
I think the Falcon Grav Tank is still from the 90s, because that came out in 2nd edition, if I recall correctly.
Yep, the Phoenix Lords are not there.
Oh, maybe they're actually getting redone.
I'll pull the other one at this point.
The Viper's from 2nd edition still. Yeah, the Falcon and the Viper, yeah, those two definitely. In fact, that Viper... Fun fact, the Viper, that version of the Viper, that was the version that came out literally in the very first issue of White Dwarf I purchased. It was issue 207.
Wow, my first issue was 365.
Yeah. And in fairness to the Viper, considering it's a 2nd edition sculpt, it holds up remarkably well.
Yeah, the pilot doesn't, but the rest of it does.
Yeah, I mean, you can fix the part just getting a new just get a head swap.
Yeah, it's just a head swap.
But and even with the Falcon Grav Tank still holds up very well as well.
Yeah, can't argue.
Because I think the only one model from around that time that did get upgraded were the jet bikes. Because the jet bikes, they're 4th edition sculpts now, I think.
Yeah, they're older than I am in 40k, and that I got in 5th, and they haven't been updated since then. Neither are Shining Spears.
But yeah, the other Phoenix Lords aren't there. The old ones, they're gone.
Yeah, when are the Crootox and Croot Hounds from? Are they early 2000s?
I think they're from 3rd edition, yeah.
Well, actually, Tau weren't a thing till 3rd edition. Neither were Necrons, so yeah, they have to be in the 2000s.
Well, technically Necrons were around 2nd, but they would just...
We don't talk about Chaos Androids.
No, I'm talking about Chaos. I'm talking about actual Necrons. Chaos Androids were 1st edition. 2nd edition, you actually had Necrons, because there was an issue of White Dwarf that actually gave away a Necron blister pack as a free gift. They didn't actually get an actual codex until 3rd edition, but they did have a usable army list in 2nd. But literally the only things you had were Necron warriors, destroyers, scarabs, and a lord. And the destroyers were completely different back in 2nd edition, because you know how they're basically half Necron, half bobsled, effectively. How they are now.
Yeah.
In 2nd edition, they were literally riding jet bikes, for lack of a better term.
Well, now they've got bloody spider-legged variants with the Ophidian destroyers.
I'll show you a picture of the 2nd edition Necron destroyer because it looks so... Weird. Yeah, very, 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 very pulp sci-fi. I know I use that term a lot to describe things, but it is very, very pulpy. Just look at that.
What the?
That was the original Necron destroyer.
Treated as a vehicle that follows all the normal rules for skimmers. See data facts printed in this article.
Yeah, data fact cards, they were a thing in 2nd edition. You actually had little cards for your vehicles in there.
No Necrons hit leadership test. The value of 10 allotted to leadership is provided on the off chance that we will at some future time unthinkably invent some special rule that requires it.
Yeah.
Right. Ruddy heck. God, how things have changed.
And in fairness, this was 2nd edition. Yeah, so this is when Necrons were first being attempted to make into an army list, because at the very start of 3rd edition, long before they got their codex, when their rules were still only in White Dwarf, they did introduce Immortals.
No, I was wondering if you were going to mention them.
But Immortals, like the original 3rd edition Immortal sculpt. Oh,
yeah, I know the model.
The original.
Oh, not the ones that survived till the Necron retcon.
The ones that basically look very much like. All right, have you ever seen the Judge Dredd movie? You know, the one with Sylvester Stallone.
No, I've seen the one with Carl Urban, but not Stallone.
Right. Do you know what the ABC Warriors look like in that?
No.
Because they look like the original Necron Immortals.
God, they look like mini knights. Would go on to look like if you gave a knight a chain gun.
It basically looked like the ABC Warrior from Judge Dredd. I'll get you a comparison. And for anyone asking about the pictures, I'll post a link in the video description to a Twitter thread that's got a picture in them. But yeah, they look like the ABC Warriors from Judge Dredd.
Yeah, okay, I see it. But yeah, to be fair, we had a student tonight who was building the new Immortals, and am I about to say what I'm about to say, or am I just saying it and then I'm going to take it back in 2 seconds? Do I miss the green rods for Gauss weapons?
Oh, I'll admit, I kind of miss them.
Like, I had old Necron warriors. Like, obviously, they were only just replaced in 9th. And I had a set of them, and then I saw my Necron army on, and I repainted over the green rods. I made them blue. But I think back to the 3rd edition Immortals that survived until the Great Necron retcon in 5th edition, and the double-rodded Gauss blast flayers, or whatever they were, Gauss blasters, I think. And I'm just like, actually, you know what? That was cool. And then I think about the destroyer that had like 4 of them, or 2 in a line. I was like, that was kind of cool. And there was one in the back of every war scythe, and I feel like I'm getting old and I'm getting nostalgic cryptic bait in my old age, but part of me kind of misses the green rods, and I don't know why. Like, I don't know.
I think it's because it was so uniquely Necron at the time with the whole transparent rod thing. Like, nothing else was using them, so.
Yeah, maybe. But I tell you what I do miss that I wish they would just f***ing do. And I think we can all agree on this one, even Bretonnian players. Fucking fix the flying stand and bring the old ones back. I know it's a dead horse, but you did it with the Pegasus Knights now. Can you just put everything back on the old goddamn flying stand? Or, if you're going to bun flying stands off, then fine, but stop with the bloody curvy rods. They're dog water. Stop it. Like, I don't know, have they redone, like, the Lizard Men? They did the Pterodons and they made the new flyers, didn't they? With a Seraphon, didn't they? Did they do like some like winged beast thing?
Yeah. But no, the new Seraphon, we still have the Pterodons and Riperdactyls from 8th edition, which have the old, like, just the regular flight stance.
Oh, I don't know why I thought they introduced. No, they introduced different skink cavalry. Sorry.
Yeah. We got new skink cavalry, but they're on ground.
Yeah, just like. I cannot stress enough my hatred of the new flying stands. Like, we were building the Space Marine Inceptors, you know, the jump pack ones with the twin guns. And literally, I was talking to the guy who was building them, and he was like, do you want me to just take the springs off their feet and try and make them stand on the floor? I was like, yes. Don't even bother with the flying stands. Just make them walk, because I cannot deal with them anymore.
Yeah, I was really happy when the new Slan don't have flight stands anymore. They just have, like, terrain, like part of the terrain on their base just cobes up and holds them up because it's just so much easier.
Yeah. Actually, that's just reminded me of a model that hasn't managed to come across to AoS from the Lizardmen range, and that's Mazdamundi.
Yeah, Mazdamundi is still super dead. Yep.
Yeah, for context, for those who don't realize who that is, Mazdamundi was a Slan who rode a Stegodon.
Yeah, he was absolutely amazing. And I miss him every day. Though, at least he's still alive in the old world. Though, yeah, I would love for him to get a mini at some point. Like, he never... he was one of the...
Did he die in the end times?
Yeah, he does.
He dies. Okay.
But he's one of the... His model was frustrating because that was back in the day where if you weren't hardcore into kit bashing, like I'm not because I'm lazy, like you just didn't... There was no model for him. You had to make it yourself. Which I always hated when they did that.
I mean, the one model that they never made that I wish they didn't, I now feel kind of betrayed by the Deathkiller Wartrike, is that we still don't have a Wazdacker model. Like, he's referenced in every codex, but he doesn't have a model, and it still annoys me.
Yeah, the new Mazdamundi, so to speak, in AoS is Lord Zektoka, but he does not ride a Stegodon. He's just a regular Star Master.
So he's not Mazdamundi then?
No, but like he's personality-wise, he's the new Mazdamundi.
Oh, because Mazdamundi was quite aggressive, wasn't he?
Oh, yeah. He was he was very aggressive. Like, his whole thing is basically that he has a mean case of angry old man syndrome.
Isn't that just like every Slan, but the others say, go away, little children, or we'll hit you. He goes, get off my lord, and I'm also going to knock your house down while I'm at it.
Well, my favorite little story about him is that they establish in the lore for Warhammer Fantasy that the reason the Slan aren't super active a lot of the time is because, like, Tzeentch and Chaos in general kind of curse them to be very, very, like, disoriented and sleepy and tired. And the whole gimmick for Mazdamundi is that some humans move in and they make the city or the little town of El Cadavo a little too close to Hexwaddle, and they keep bothering him, and they wake him up from his nap 3 times in a row in a single century, and he gets so angry the third time he wakes up that he literally just breaks the curse that the dark gods put on the Slan because he was that mad. And he's just like, put me on the biggest standoff we have. I'll deal with it myself. And he just goes and kills everybody.
Yeah, that's...
Also, can I just say, the original John Blanche artwork for him goes hard.
Oh, yeah, where he's like shooting the lightning that's exploding into like
a Saurus.
Fire. Yeah, well, the old Slan were a lot more well, not original Slan, but the old Slan that were still part of the Lizardmen were much more Saurian in aspect a lot of the time. Like there were 2 distinct versions of, there was like the really, really froggy ones that were kind of goofy looking, but a lot of the art for them, there were 2 kinds of Slan. There were like the regular Slan Mage Priest, and then there were the Slan Lords, which he was a Slan Lord, and they were actually like terrifyingly strong in melee scenarios.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Mainly because they were being carried into battle by about 4 temple guards.
Yeah, but you can also see like that Mazdamundi was a lot more aggressive and like borderline, like just mean looking. Like he was pretty scary.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's really interesting, and I hope I remember reading. I had the High Elves book, and I know we're doing Old World talk again, but I don't care. I don't get to do it very often, so I remember in the High Elves book, I think it was the story of, I want to say, Eltharion that really captured me, and Alithanar. And Eltharion the Grim you might have heard of. I think he's a playable lord in Warhammer 2. So people might know who he is with Grom the Paunch and all of that. But Alithanar was basically like the ultimate Skyrim stealth archer. He was a shadow warrior of Nagaryth, not Nagaroth, watch your wording, who used to just constantly piss on the bonfire of every single Dark Elf by going and raiding Nagaroth or shooting anyone that turned up. And he basically had a longbow that functioned as a bolt thrower. So it was an actual normal bow that had piercing bolts and could shoot through ranks. It was hilariously good fun.
Yeah, he's in Total War as well. I think he was a free LC.
Is he?
Yeah, he was a free LC character for Warhammer 2.
Fair enough then.
But yeah, Elithnar was ridiculously hardcore and hilarious. Like, the whole thing where he defeats a Dark Elf army, and instead of just killing the survivors, he crucifies them all on a cliff. Which, like, damn, alright.
Yep, that's a thing. And then you had I had the Core Hill model, I had the Caradrian model. Who were the other ones? Tyrion Teclis, Core Hill, Caradrian, Alethanar, Eltharion, and I feel like there was another wizard hero who was named, or was there another one in general? Well, yeah, she wasn't in the High Elf's book most of the time. For a while she was. And when I got it in 7th, she wasn't. Then they put her back in 8th, I think.
Yes, that is, yeah. And she actually got a mini.
Yes, she did.
But yeah, like,
remember the time Grom the Paunch invented Elf 1? That was fun.
And Eltharion whooped his sorry ass.
Yeah, it only almost destroyed the world, but yeah. Freaking Grom.
Yeah.
And it's all because a goblin got fat from eating some troll meat and got some indigestion.
Good old Grom. But yeah. I think elf players in particular will hopefully be really excited for the old world, because like literally all of their favorite characters are already alive and out and about.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what they do when they remake Orion.
That should be cool. And it'll be really fun if they let the setting keep going, because like Grom,
then they can do the Skaven thing, as you were saying.
Well, yeah, Skaven thing, and like, some of the special characters we'll get to see happen as well would be super fun. Like Grom the Paunch has not happened yet by the old world.
Oh.
So he would be a looming threat in the future.
Would Grimgor Ironhide be about?
Yes, Grimgor is around. He doesn't show up in the old world for many years still. But granted, it's a little crazy, but according to the records we have, Grimgor has been around since before the Empire was founded. Like, Grimgor is like at least 3,000 years old.
For an orc?
Yeah, he's pretty old.
How long do 40k orcs live, Ram? Like, if they... well, I know an orc has never died of natural causes, you know what I mean, but who's the longest living orc we have records of?
I think it's currently Gazgal.
And he's only, what? 250.
Well, he's been around since, at the very least, since Armageddon 2.
But Armageddon 2 was 60-ish years to the day before Armageddon 3, and Armageddon 3 was at 1 minute to midnight, and we're now 200 or so years past that. Also worth noting, Gazgal has died.
Yeah, but he got better.
He got a new body. I know the longest lived grot is 3. I'm aware of that, but like, in terms of orcs, I can't think of many orc heroes who are actually very... We never got dates on Zogwart or Badruk or...
The only other orc I recall ever being described as being old for an orc, from what I can recall, was Nazra, but he's dead now. He died in Arcs of Omen.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, there are some greenskins that are like crazy old in Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah, but 40k, I know they die in battle a lot, whereas fantasy orcs generally tend to either die or run away a lot more.
It's easier to get away when like you're not blown up in space or the planet you're on doesn't get exterminated.
Yes, that's very true. Well, it did, but...
Yeah, I really hope we eventually get to the point where Grimgor comes back, and I really hope Grimgor gets a new mini that actually shows off his genuine size. Because Grimgor is so much bigger than people think he is.
Yeah, I mean, I hope GW has started to learn their lesson a little bit about moving the plot. Like, obviously, Heresy's Heresy. It's got a very limited time frame, and Old World does too. But 250 years-ish is a long time in the old world. In Heresy, how long does the Heresy take? Is it like 8 years?
Something like that.
Like, but we're already like halfway through it. We're already at the Siege of Terror kind of stuff in terms of the boxes. So there's not a lot to say.
In terms of the books, we're literally right at the very end now.
No, but in terms of like, in terms of timeline, because we're talking about with Old World, the fact they've got this massive, like, centuries of time to play with and can take it very slowly. Heresy, like... What was the battle that they were talking about in... it was the Siege of Chthoniya, wasn't it? Is the plot point that we're at.
Which is happening... It's happening concurrently with the Siege, if I recall.
Yeah. So yeah, they haven't got a lot of time to play with in terms of Heresy. They just have to keep updating the rules. They can't really actually move the plot. But then the Heresy's plot doesn't move much anyway.
I just realised something. as well. Because you know how we got plastic, we got models for 40k for Angron, Mortarion, and Magnus, and yet
And we need Fulgrim. Yep.
we got Fulgrims for not AoS, Fulgrims for Horus Heresy. That makes me think, like, because they did his model for Horus Heresy in his demon form, that doesn't. To me, that makes me feel like they have absolutely no intention of making a model for him for 40k for a good long while.
I think I think they made maybe missed the trick with Demon Fulgrim, because the problem is that the other 3 Demon Primarchs are plastic and huge. I don't know how big Demon Fulgrim is. I've not seen his model side by side with Magnus and Angron and Mortarion, but canonically, Fulgrim is not small, and if his model doesn't match scale-wise with the other 3 Demon Primarchs, it's going to be very awkward. But I agree with what you're saying, but if that were the case, they should have made him in plastic. Even if they had no intention of putting him in 40k, they should have made him in plastic to at least tell the 40k players, hey, if we ever do Emperor's Children, this is the model you buy.
In regards to size comparison, he's roughly the same size as Angron, just that his wings make him a bit taller.
Okay, fair enough. I hadn't seen them side by side, so thank you for telling me that. I didn't know. But that's good. So it looks like scale-wise it fits in, but they should have made him in plastic if they intended for him to be the 40k model. Because what they would be really sensible, if they're not doing Dark Mech, we know they're doing another 40k faction soon, and the logical assumption would be Emperor's Children. But if they've made Demon Fulgrim Resin, why would you then say to 40k players, hey, go buy this Resin model for your Primarch when all the other Primarchs are in plastic?
£170.
Exactly. When all the other Primarchs are 2/3 to half the price in plastic, it's a bit of a kick in the dick for Emperor's Children players. So if they're doing Dark Mech, I think it's fine, and Emperor's Children can sit on the back burner. But if they're planning to do Emperor's Children as a faction, then Demon Fulgrim should have been plastic.
Yeah. Again, which makes me think that they have no intention of releasing a model for him in 40k for a good long while. Because if they just released him in Resin for Forge World stuff, they wouldn't cost themselves sales by releasing a plastic version 6 months down the line. Because that's just stupid. That's just stupid from a business
I
standpoint.
agree with. But what they could do is release the Emperor's Children faction and say, we will make plastic Fulgrim one day. In the meantime, use the Resin model, and then they can double dip.
I mean, I'm
but then
sure,
naturally, would plastic Demon Fulgrim sell well at all at that point? No.
I mean, I'm sure that you probably have 40k rules for him printed in White Dwarf or something. I imagine that will be the case because they did that for Angron for back in 5th edition.
There were Apocalypse rules, but yes.
I know, but he still had rules. You could still play Angron in 40k, and that was literal decades before he got a 40k model.
This is true. But yeah.
So, same point applies. They'll probably just print his rules hey, do you want to use this Fulgrim, this nice Fulgrim model in 40k? Here are some rules for him. Buy White Dwarf.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wow, we spent a long time ranting about Old World, didn't we, guys?
To be fair, we went off the Old World tangent for a while, and
I know.
But yeah, to be fair though, I make a conscious point of I don't talk about Sigmar as much as I normally should on episodes, even when there's a big stuff for Sigmar to do. If it ain't minis, I don't talk about it because no one cares apart from me. Normally, of you and the guest, respectfully, no one really cares. So having an actual fantasy AoS person to talk to is a breath of fresh air, and I'm going to capitalize on every single minute I get.
No, you're grand. There is one thing that Warhammer community is putting up there, which is kind of interesting. They're holding another Arena of Death tournament
On Warhammer Plus.
Yes.
So you can't watch it.
No, you can't watch it, but I'm interested in some of the actual characters they've picked.
No,
Magnus
they did Swiss. They got here by... Sorry, that's a term from Yu-Gi-Oh! Basically, they did a round robin of a lot of people, and these were the top 16.
Oh.
They did a group stage. And
yeah, I get that, but did they actually decide the pairings through that as well?
I'll read the article. 2 seconds. So they did
because if it was decided randomly, then it's very convenient that Magnus goes up against Bjorn.
No, it's based on. It says here. So they did So, for example, Abaddon and Gazkul got knocked out in Swiss. Like, they got knocked out. And the Norn Emissary got knocked out. Gilliman barely made the top 16.
Yeah,
but
I get it, but I'm talking about the pairings up as well.
It then says they're based on rankings, but they had to reevaluate the rankings of the top 16 because the initial rankings were based on points values, but then reassessed for the top 16. So, for example, Canis Rex was ranked 1. He was number 1 seed, and Mortarion was 2 seed. And now Mortarion is the top seed. So I'm guessing its top seed has bottom seed. Because actually, no, why would Mortarion have the Avatar in that case? I don't know. It should be Gilliman. But apparently, like, Shalaxi was... Oh, she got top ranked. So Shalaxi Hellbane is your top seed going into this, and they're fighting Kairos. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly how they've done it, but they did Swiss to knock it down.
It's very convenient that Bjorn and Magnus get paired up against one another. You have to admit, it's very convenient knowing their history.
Yeah, but if we were doing it on ultimate convenience, then Gilliman should be fighting Mortarion.
Yeah, but in fact, Gilliman and Scarbrand does work considering, the events of Rise of the Primarch, because they did have a punch-up in that, so
this is
that
true.
does fit as
so
well.
Why is Angron fighting Be'lakor?
Because Angron hates everyone.
Angron should be fighting Lion for a rematch.
Why is Marnius Calgar fighting a knight?
Why is a knight there in the first place? But, oh yeah, there's your top 16. So yeah, we'll see who wins. I don't actually care.
So, for the benefit of those who do want to know, it's Magnus versus Bjorn, Lion versus Mozrog, Avatar of Cain versus Mortarion, Shalaxi versus Kairos, Canis Rex versus Marnius Calgar, Gilliman versus Scarbrand, the Silent King versus Rotigus, and Angron versus Be'lakor. Some of these pairings are just absolutely stupid. I'm sorry. Well, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say this now. Avatar of the Cain's not going anywhere, is it? Because of the meme. Yeah, it's the Barry Horowitz of 40k. That's a deep cut.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm reading the Dawnbringer's story because apparently, the Flesh Eater Court judge. Yep, he's totally sane. He doesn't have the delusion of, oh, I'm a chivalric knight or keeping laws over my lord's noble lands. No, he's completely sane. Which is funny. Sorry, my bad. I just, yeah.
No, yeah, you're fine. But given the time, I think we should try and move on to questions if we can.
Yep, that's absolutely fine. I've got a couple of those. So, let's fire a couple off. Would the clone of Horus, or the clone of someone who had their soul destroyed, Horus is an example, be a blank, or do they get a replacement soul?
Basically, the way souls work in 40k, and we know this purely because of the existence of the pariah gene, souls are themselves created as a result of a biological process during growth. So basically, as soon as a fetus gestates, it develops a soul as part of the biological process. And we know clones basically do develop their own unique souls. This is actually shown in Silent Hunters because there is a Drukhari Drakon who has a doorway that leads into his special little section of Kimura, and it's keyed directly to his unique soul signature, and because of this, he even turns around and says, it's linked to my soul alone, and if a clone of mine tries to access it, his soul will be different, it won't open for him.
Right.
So a clone will have its own soul, which will be different from that of the original.
Okay. So, here's another one. As far as we understand, major events in the Imperium are often caused by one person, like Huron, Gotrandia, Horus, etc. Are there any major system-wide conflicts that have been instigated by anything close to or resembling a corporation? My brain says Novaterra Interregnum, but I'm willing to be corrected.
Are there any corporations in 40k?
No, not exactly. But what I think they mean is like a larger conglomerate that has instigated this conflict rather than the ravings of a madman like Horus or a tactical rebellion like Huron or whatever. It's interesting, like I can only think of the Nova Terra Interregnum as where a large group caused a major incident that wasn't, the Inquisition did a whoopsie.
Yeah, I think that's the only one that does come to mind.
Yeah, that's my best guess anyway.
Mm.
Right. Where is it? Okay. So a bit more of a rambly question to close us out. How is it that you guys stay motivated in the hobby space? The codex nonsense, i.e. out of date after release, lack of lore, or new units not in the book, no kit bashing, etc., is one of the reasons that this commenter is stepping back from a hobby. I mean, they're not even sure why they listen to the podcast. I mean, it's because we're cool. But how do you stay motivated in the hobby?
Sheer spite. Motivation out of spite is like, I will not give up, kind of thing. To be honest, this isn't really something that has a really simple answer for me. Like, I kind of just do. I know that's not much of an answer, but I don't know how else really to explain it. No, I don't know. I honestly don't know how to explain it, to be honest.
I think I would say that I find joy in the little things, like little snippets of new stories, or looking out for things that make for fun little updates, or enjoying other people's passions in the hobby, whether it's how they kit bash minis, or seeing how people list make, or seeing how people like write their own little lore stuff. And granted, it's a hobby, it's like you shouldn't base too much around it, because Games Workshop is not, we'll say, the best handling their IPs. So you don't want to get so wrapped up in it that whenever they inevitably bumble, which they do often, that it is awful for you. I think it's about having a healthy set of boundaries with the hobby. That way you can enjoy it without being overly frustrated by the consistently bizarre decisions that Games Workshop inevitably makes week to week.
I get that. And to be honest, I think for me, part of it is also the fact that this may sound weird to a lot of people, but I actually, outside of this podcast and my own work I do on my videos and that, I don't really follow that much in the way of 40k related content outside of my quote unquote work hours, because I'm surrounded by it when I'm working all the time, and if I'm surrounded by it during my off time, my downtime as well, I would probably get sick of it. I'm not gonna lie. So it's like whenever I'm not focusing on 40k related stuff, I will focus on something else, things like wrestling or some other franchise, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm kind of coming from the opposite side of that, because I work as a teacher. I work full time, long hours, very busy, and not a lot of time for my hobbies and socializing. Warhammer to me is my out of hours social thing. I was chatting, and literally Warhammer Club finished, and all the pupils went home. We were packing away, me and some other people who were staying behind to tidy up, and we were there for 45 minutes. We were packing away, but we were nattering about Warhammer. We never repeated ourselves. We changed the subject constantly, and we just nattered, just like we do on this podcast. Okay, we talked about Old World for 40 minutes, I know, but we changed, we didn't stay on one thing for too long, and we kept bouncing around between things. And that, for me, is that social contact. I'm not sitting here and saying I'm a fucking hermit, but I don't have a lot of time to be sociable because of teaching, and I don't always want to go into social spaces because I don't really want to run into my pupils outside of school, thank you very much, all the time. So, to me, being able to talk about Warhammer is how I stay motivated. If I just painted models and played the game and lived in a shell, I probably would have given up on the hobby years ago. And I know that because when I was 17, I was burnt out. I was done because the game wasn't fun. I kept losing playing guard. And my mate said to me, start a YouTube channel. And it revitalized my love for the hobby. And I'm still here now. Oh my God, wait a minute. Oh my God, it's my 10-year anniversary tomorrow.
Hey! Happy anniversary.
Oh shit,
you need to put out a special video now.
I haven't made one.
It's a 10th anniversary, you have to.
Shut up. Okay, I know. But yeah, okay. Like, that's how I stay motivated, is it's my social space. It's where I can go, no judgment, no nonsense. I can just talk about what I am passionate about that isn't physics, because my job, it revolves around science. So Warhammer is what I talk about. It's like you go to wrestling and like Dragon Ball Z or whatever the cock you talk about. Transformers, that's the one. I have 40k and I have AoS. And being able to share my passion with like-minded people is how I stay motivated. Like, running this Warhammer club is the best thing I could have ever done, because I get to share my passion, I get to play the game, I get to paint models, and I get to inspire the next generation, which as a teacher, there is no greater reward.
Well said.
And what about you, Sotek?
I mean, for me, it's following storylines and being able to enjoy something that's just kind of always been a part of my life. And like a lot of my favorite friendships and relationships were kind of built around the hobby of Warhammer and, you know, list building or going to tournaments or talking about lore and all this other stuff. Those are all super important to me. And I don't know, I just like reading the books and having fun with this stuff. And the thing for me is, I think I like to try and find solutions and explore the stories without worrying too much about when, you know, something maybe goofs up a little bit or they do something that I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of that. Because there's, 40 plus years worth of other stuff I can be going through.
Mm-hmm.
So, for me, the hobby, it's not really about what GW is really up to at any given point, honestly, at this point, because the hobby is so much bigger than them. Which they don't want you to think about that because they want your money. But
Games Workshop could close tomorrow and Warhammer would still be here in 20 years.
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those things that I don't get burned out on the hobby, because to me it's not about modern events. It's about constantly trying to tie various threads together and enjoy everything that came before. And every once in a while they will do something that will get my attention and I'll be like, oh, that's super exciting and awesome and stuff. Like when they dropped through Shorin model, I was like, oh my god, fucking finally.
Yeah, Shorin's amazing.
After like, that's a guy we should have gotten ages ago, and now he's finally out, and his model's gorgeous, and yada yada yada. So it's just kind of those things of, there's so much to look back on and enjoy that if you're not happy with what's currently happening, can maybe consider delving backwards and seeing where that takes you.
Yeah, I made a video on burnout when I was at uni, and I went through another phase where I really was out of the hobby. I'd broken my arm, so I couldn't hobby. And I really struggled to restart this hobby project I was working on. It took me months to really get back up to speed. I just made my lore videos, sure, but actually hobbying and playing the game took me months. And what I said in that video, and I stand by it now, and I'll say it to the person who made this comment, is if you're struggling with the codex problem, i.e. 40k at the moment, step back and try something else. Because one of the beauties of where Games Workshop is now is there are 5, if you count Middle-earth, which you can, dedicated main game systems, plus spin-off games like Necromunda and Blood Bowl and Warcry and Underworlds and Kill Team, which do not have this problem and are available to you and might just inspire you. Like, when I got burnt out on 40k, I played AoS, and I played AoS almost exclusively for 3 years until 9th edition got me back in, and Warhammer Club got me back in. Diversifying your hobby repertoire gives you A, more things to talk about, B, more things to read about, C, more models to play with, and D, a break from the things that are annoying you. Like, yes, absolutely, I agree with what Rem's saying, you can't expose yourself to something all the time, and I don't. Have it as a hobby, or have it as a thing you do full time, and then you have something you do on the side. But have a diverse thing to do. If you're getting pissed off at 40k, you don't like where it's going, have a look at Sigmar. Buy a Demon's Army that you can bring back to 40k, and go play Sigmar. because it's a different game. It feels a little bit similar, but it's got completely different lore, completely different rules. Play that. If you think it's too easy and it's all gone all kid-friendly, go play Old World and go play Heresy, because they're the old systems. And if they're annoying you, okay, you invested, what, 100 quid? Maybe? Or maybe you got the rules online secondhand, you had some old models lying around, or you got them for 50 quid on eBay. Boom. And you can just sell them on. You're maybe 10 quid down, but you've had a break, you're refreshed, and you're ready to come back to your 40k now. That's my advice, is just diversify. Variety is the spice of life.
And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we shall call it there for this episode. So, thank you very much to everyone who tuned in for this episode. We hope you enjoyed it.
Sorry for all the old world.
Yes. Thank you very much to Loremaster of Sotek for joining us this episode, despite the fact I never got a word in edgeways.
That's why you got to talk to me before we started.
Indeed. So, until next time, this has been Remleiz and 40k Theories.
This has been Neve from Tactica Imperialis.
Oh yeah, and I'm here. Thanks for being here.
You're welcome. And we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.